The meeting come to order, and meeting of the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee on November 30th at 5:30 p.m. And we're going to start with a roll call. So let us know if you're here. Don't let us know if you're not here.
All right, Chair Rob, here. Vice Chair Daniel. Present. Tova. Present. Everett. Lehua Nani is, let us know she's probably going to be late. Vernon. Here. Mike. Present. Cody. Wayne. Here. Keoki. Here. Jennifer. Here. And Brian. All right, thank you all.
So we do have quorum, but we're dwindling in numbers. I'll get that in a little bit. Vilina mai na lala ke komike olelo o kaya ulo no ka papa ho olala no Maui hema. Vilina mai no ho I ka po o ke ena ho olala o ke kalana o Maui me ka daho leho o Maui. O kaka kohani ke yala ka ho holo ani ina pahohopa o ka papa ho olala a me na I kamo kuda kele a me na I kamahana e piliani ke kulu ana ina hale. So we're going to start today, as we've done the past ones, with a short introduction, and this time Keoki is providing it.
Hello, everybody. Oh, that's loud, yeah? Small room. Okay, so just a little bit more in depth about myself, and thank you for all the other introductions that everyone else has. So my full name is Keoki Wolfgang Felter. That's about as German as it's going to get. So that basically means I'm German. My dad came from Germany in the late 50s. The year before statehood, he was a doctor here on Maui. Actually, Maui's, to my knowledge, he was Maui's first OBGYN. There were doctors practicing obstetrics, but no specialists. So my dad came here, and he was Maui's first OB, and performed the first successful in vitro, to my understanding, delivered a lot of babies along many generations on this island. So that's a little bit about my father's side. My mother is a third generation Japanese from Leeward, Kohala on the Big Island, a place called Mahukona. It was a sugar, the railroad company there had a landing, and they docked a lot of sugar in and out of there. So my mother was born in Mahukona and moved to Maui when she was quite young. So she was raised on Maui. Now, I was raised in Maalaea, and that's why my interest here in the South Maui district, fishing, diving, surfing, like most local boys do. The oceanic environment has taught me so many things in my life. To say it's very important to me is a big understatement. I still work in the South Maui area as an ocean safety officer in the county of Maui. I'm currently stationed in the South District, which are the Kama'oles, and I came from the McKenna District, which is way down further south. But so just a little bit about myself in that. So whenever I'm speaking and I offer my manao on any subjects, now you guys kind of know a little bit more maybe about where it's coming from as far as my heart, my mind, my soul. Again, our ocean environments reflect so much of what we have done or what we're doing to our land environments, right? They're all interconnected, as we know. So again, thank you for this moment in time, and hope we can continue in this process and collectively come up with very mindful solutions to very important topics for this area that we're calling the South Maui planned area. So mahalo nui for this time.
Thank you. Now who will be next? Cody is going next. Great. Just gonna make a note so I don't forget myself. So last week we made it through the policies relating to parks and greenways, but we didn't make it through the actions. And I'm assuming that they'll be also deferred to December 21st, our catch-up date. Is that correct?
That's up to you. You can put the parks on now, or you can wait until then. It is technically on the agenda.
Okay. I am a little concerned about that because we were talking about going into this next section, so I think people are expecting to go on to that. That's the only reason why I wouldn't do it. Otherwise, I think let's continue with the plan of looking at the next set of policies, the housing section, just so people are prepared, and then maybe next time we can shift to continue where we left off instead. I have a few housekeeping items here. So we lost a member last time as Tom Blackburn Rodriguez stepped down. What is the current process or progress in getting a replacement?
My understanding is that Director McLean has advised Mayor Victorino about the vacancy, and he's looking to replace and seeking someone in the next, as soon as he can.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I would just offer that this Friday's county council meeting, that item is on the agenda, that the mayor has announced it and just announced that he was getting a replacement. So it sounds like he was quickly aware, and he's hopefully going to take quick action.
Thank you. And then I wanted to follow up on the decision we made 2 weeks ago. Do we have a date for Kalikoa Ka'eo to come talk to us?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Lehua stepped up to take care of that because they communicate a lot all the time, so she offered.
Okay, thank you. I'll email, since she's not here, I'll email her afterwards just to see where that's at. Should we try again to have 2 breaks of 10 minutes each at 6:30 and 7:30? Okay. Presentations today are going to be at most 8 minutes each. And I just wanted to check again, as we did a couple of weeks ago, if people have been able to review the homework for today. So we have 5 pieces of homework. So if you have reviewed the town hall video about housing, please raise your hand. If you reviewed the housing resource paper, please raise your hand. If you have reviewed the population forecast, please raise your hand. Looking very good. If you've reviewed the policies that we're going to be discussing today, please raise your hand. And finally, have you reviewed the actions we're going to be reviewing today? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we are going to hear from some speakers. And no, I want the public testimony after the speakers because they may have something to comment on what the speakers have said. Otherwise, they won't really know what to comment on.
I understand that, but you still have to afford people the opportunity.
Oh, okay.
And they can decide.
I don't think it's required to have public testimony before the speakers. I don't think that's a requirement. That's just a convention. Yeah. So I strongly prefer to have.
Maybe people who don't want can stay, so that's why you offer.
So that's why we have 8-minute limit on the presentations. So we are going to hear from I believe 3 presenters today. And then we'll have public testimony on those items, and then after the public testimony, we'll begin our committee membership meeting. So, let's see, who do we have up first today as a speaker? We have Brendan.
Hello, everyone. Brendan Comboy, Senior Planner for the county. Sorry for this kind of arrangement, kind of behind you here. I just want to talk to you briefly about the concept of missing middle housing. Sorry, here. Probably should have set this up if I was going first. Sorry, is that not showing up as a... Okay. Sorry, I'm going to need some help because this isn't displaying. Is there a reason it's not transitioning on the... It's just not even turned. That's all right. You know what? Now it's showing up? Yeah, there we go. Okay. That was awkward. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to leave it because I've wasted enough time here. So just briefly, I wanted to go over this concept of missing middle housing for you all, just so you have a little bit of context about what the kind of current thoughts are in planning. This is a very popular kind of policy that a lot of other cities are pursuing right now to try to do infill with what's called the missing middle housing. So what is missing middle housing? They're building types such as duplexes, fourplexes, cottage courts, and courtyard buildings. They provide diverse housing options and support locally serving retail and public transportation options. We call them missing because they have typically been illegal to build since the mid-1940s, and middle because they sit in the middle of a spectrum between detached single-family homes and mid-rise to high-rise apartment buildings in terms of form and scale, as well as the number of units and often affordability. So typically there are about 4 to 8 units on a block that would accommodate a standard house or single-family home. They can be up to 19 units, kind of on the higher end of that spectrum with the live-work. They can be attached or detached. And so kind of the origins in the past, they follow the form and function of a walkable neighborhood because they were designed before the advent of automobiles. They're often referred to as streetcar suburbs. So if you go to any major U.S. city that has development from prior to the advent of the automobile, you'll find these neighborhoods everywhere you look, and they have a variety of single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, things of that nature. As Daniel Perolik, the guy that kind of popularized this idea of missing middle, says, it's a house-scale buildings in a walkable setting. So why is this important, and why is this something that you should be considering as we talk about housing? Not all housing is created equal in terms of the unit type, size, and kind of the demographic that people need for that type of housing. So for example, we're going through a pretty large demographic shift in the next coming decades. Millennials and baby boomers make up the big kind of barbell end of that housing population curve. So if you look at this is male and female population in Hawaii in 2010, you can see that it's kind of mirroring, it's just moving up. So we're getting older, and the millennials are kind of moving into that prime child raising age, and family raising age, where they're looking for more space, but they also want walkable communities. The baby boomers are also retiring, downsizing often. There's health issues, retirement, things of that nature. So they're also looking for smaller units that they can live in as well. And as we know, here in Hawaii, we have a large proportion of multi-generational housing units, people that have grandma and grandpa and little baby kids all the way down. And so what's really interesting and challenging with housing is that for the past 50 to 70 years, we have only been building single-family housing and high-rise apartments because we made things illegal via zoning, Euclidean zoning, basically. And so, again, with this multi-generational housing, it's quadrupled since 1971. That's also reflective of paucity of housing choices. So, again, what is missing middle housing? It takes the form of basically a single-family unit and integrates well into a existing neighborhood. So some of the types that you might see are, for instance, a duplex side-by-side, a stacked duplex, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses. they're all meant to integrate into existing neighborhoods. And so what are the characteristics of missing middle housing? It's walkable, it's a small building footprint, there's lower perceived density. I know density is a four-letter word for some of us. Smaller, well-designed units, fewer off-street parking spaces, simple construction. It's type 5 construction, so it can be built with wood up to 5 stories, which makes it more affordable. Creates community, it's marketable, variety of transportation. It can hit affordability price points without necessarily requiring subsidies, which is nice. It can also be built to a higher end. But in either case, it produces more units, which creates filtering down the line. Sense of community. And then lastly, predictability and transparency is a big one. So again, as I was saying, it's a smaller building footprint, so you can fit them in your typical kind of city lot. Creates community, often by redesigning kind of the layout that we're used to, where it's auto-dominated. So we have, in this instance, a courtyard kind of construction where neighbors can face and interact with each other. And that's going to be a bigger issue as the older generations want to age in place and be around community as well. So how can missing middle be integrated in various forms? So as you're thinking about your policies and your actions and how you'd like to craft them, it's not just a one-size-fits-all. It can be distributed throughout a block. It could be placed on the end grain of a block, kind of through a transition. So you have more higher density units kind of on the end with some of the multifamily interspersed. Transitioning to a commercial corridor and transitioning to higher density housing. So in each instance, you can see it's not a one-size-fits-all. It kind of depends on the context and the location. Form-based predictability and transparency is a crucial component for getting the buy-in and trust of the public, as well as developers, so that everyone kind of has the same idea of what's going to come in there. So oftentimes I think people get upset about new development in them because they don't know what to expect and they don't know what it's going to look like. By applying some form standards to it, people have a better idea. It's easily understood by anyone from the public who can open up your zoning code and look at it. It's picture-based, and it should be based off like the local vernacular architecture. So here in Hawaii, we'd want to find examples of existing missing middle housing and kind of base our designs off of that. Sorry, I'm just kind of rifling through this because I know we have a lot to do tonight. But this is just a nice little example I found that, kind of, to me, looks kind of like a Hawaiian architectural style in a sense. But you can see kind of the design characteristics here. So it's not just about form necessarily of the buildings, but it also incorporates the streetscape standards so that they're, promoting that walkability. It has access to the rear and parking in the rear so that you kind of front the street here, and they have a shared courtyard for kind of that enhanced community building aspect. So with that, I'll just turn it over to if there's any questions, but I know that was like a very rapid fire explanation of missing middle housing. There is a chart up here. I did bring Dan Perolich's book if you want to take a look at it after, and I'm happy to talk to anyone after as well. If you have questions now, feel free to let me know.
I think we'll take questions afterwards. Just
Okay. Yep. Thanks, sir.
So we have Linda.
I got it figured out now. Okay. Yeah, it's my great time.
Aloha, good evening. My name is Linda Munsell. I'm currently the Deputy Director for the Department of... Sorry, you're right, small room. My name is Linda Munsell. I'm currently the Deputy Director for the Department of Housing and Human Concerns. I really appreciate having an opportunity to be here tonight and discuss housing, specifically in South Maui. Let's see if I can... So the planning team was very specific in what they were asking me to provide for tonight. And of course, I had so much more I wanted to share with you that I broke this up into what they kind of asked me to do and then everything else that I wanted to share, but I'm not going to have time. Just in case you find it helpful later when you're trying to sleep tonight, You can review that then. So what I'm going to cover is a general discussion of housing need, and then I'm going to use that to then hone in on specific need in South Maui, and then talk about a little bit about what is actually planned and being built. The additional information I provided but won't cover is more general in terms of how housing is developed, some of the barriers to housing, all of which you probably know already. And then I also provided a few comments on some specific policies and the plan and that I felt were important. And then I left you with a few last thoughts for your future consideration. So the planning department asked me to provide information specific to South Maui. But to get there, I think I needed to start with a big picture, which I think will help when we start to actually get into the details that you actually want for the community plan. The first question is, how do we know what the housing needs are in the county, and particularly in South Maui? Obviously, there are a number of different sources of information, but the primary one that the Department of Housing and Human Concerns uses is the Hawaii Housing Planning Study. The last housing planning study was completed in 2019, and as of 2019, the county needed to produce approximately 10,400 new units between 2020 and 2025. The point I want to make here is that housing needs, whether it's countywide or specific to South Maui, is not generic units. We actually need to create housing that's targeted at very specific income levels. So again, using the countywide numbers here just as an example, those 10,400 units are broken up into various income categories that you see on this particular chart. Approximately 46% of the units that we need before 2025 are market-priced units targeted at households earning more than 140% of the area median income. And approximately 54% of those homes are considered workforce units that are targeted at households earning less than 140% of the area median income. And as you can see on this chart, the units are distributed all the way down to our very lowest income residents. So, okay, while the Hawaii Housing Planning Study doesn't specifically break out the South Maui housing need in a nice chart like the one you saw, we can try to project what the need in this community plan area is using data from elements in your plan already, which you've talked a little bit about, and then the associated technical paper, which you also have. This data forecasts that South Maui's population will grow by between 3,700 and 6,100 new residents by 2045. We also know that currently there are 2.59 residents per household, which is up from 2.44 residents per household in 2010. This is an important data point that's going to become more apparent a little bit later in the next slide or two. We also know that in South Maui there are over 19,000 occupied homes and an additional 2,700 vacation homes that are used occasionally. These 2,700 homes do not include the units that are used as short-term rentals, which would fall into a different category. So different folks will come up with different numbers, but using the data that we have, we can try to start to project how many new units we're going to need to build to accommodate just the new residents projected for South Maui. Our simple math estimates indicate that between 1,400 and 2,400 new units will need to be built just for those new residents. If we had a constant household size in South Maui, which we don't, as I've already mentioned, the number of households would increase at the same rate as the population. That would mean that these numbers would be in a reasonable estimation of housing need for the future. Instead, what we've seen is that household sizes have increased, and not just in South Maui, but across the entire county. And an increase in household size is one indicator suggesting that we've got additional pent-up demand for housing as a result of crowding or doubling up. And this is something that we really need to take into consideration when we're doing our planning. In fact, the Hawaii Housing Planning Study showed that in 2019, South Maui had 17.6% of all households were considered crowded or doubled up. And so with 19,000 housing units in South Maui that are occupied, that would mean roughly 3,400 of them are crowded or doubled up. Now, I couldn't find data that told me what percentage of these households would choose to split up and move out if there were units available that they could afford. So I wasn't exactly sure how to calculate that. And I didn't add them to the numbers that you're going to see here shortly. But even if only 25% of these homes, of these families that are doubled up, decided that they wanted to move, that would translate to another 850 units to our count. So it's certainly something to keep in mind as you work towards developing this community plan. So the 1,400 to 2,400 units that we've estimated so far doesn't include continued demand for vacation homes, but we can try to estimate that demand as well. Currently, vacation homes are about 12% of the total units in South Maui, suggesting that we would need between 170 to 300 more of these units in order to maintain that ratio and meet continued demand in that area. I did notice that one of your policy statements, there's a proposal to prohibit the construction of new vacation homes until there's enough workforce homes being developed. Frankly, we've been fighting this workforce shortage of homes since forever. We see articles from back in 1970s that still say that so I'm not sure that we're going to accomplish that. But I do know that if we don't build these homes, those folks are still going to move here. And what they're going to do is, instead of buying these new homes that we potentially would develop, they would be buying those homes that would be typically purchased by our upper income professionals, and therefore those folks would be priced out of the market. So I would just ask you to use caution and make sure that in your policy decisions that you're not having an unintended consequence there. Okay, so let's get down to tax. All right, so again, as I said before in the introduction, the units that we need in South Maui are not generic. They really need to be targeted to households at specific income levels, which, if it follows the county averages I showed earlier, would look something like this chart. And again, approximately 46% of the units would need to be market units, plus another 200 or 300 units to meet the demand for second homes and vacation homes. The rest of the units, 54%, are spread down the income levels, as you can see here. And in this case, I'm showing both the low and high projected numbers, but not including pent-up demand caused by the current crowding. When we come up with something, and that brings us to something in the range of either 2,400 or 2,700 units, plus whatever we need to take care of that crowding problem. I'm not a planner, but I'm assuming that enough land needs to be set aside to accommodate a much higher number of housing units than you see here, since development is never a straight line. And often planned projects, as we'll also see, not all of them actually make it to groundbreaking. So what do we have under construction now? We currently have something like 295 units under construction, give or take, which felt extremely underwhelming when I made this chart. 175 units are for sale, 40 of them are workforce units, and 35 are market units. We also have 120 rental units under construction in one project. 118 of those units are affordable rentals, and 2 of those units are set aside for resident management units. This is a list of the projects that we've identified as being under construction right now, and you guys can look at these at your leisure later if you'd like. We have a lot of units pending action of some sort in South Maui, with the hope that they will be under construction in the next 5 to 10 years. Some of these certainly will move forward and some will not. I always get nervous when I talk about pending projects because everybody says, oh, no problem. Well, that's not really true. Some of these have been in the works for a number of years and seem to be dead in the water, so don't assume that these will actually be built. But for this discussion, we have almost 1,800 for sale units planned and 472 that are currently projected to be workforce, and 1,300 plus are anticipated to be market units. There are also 340 rental units in planning, 337 of those are workforce or affordable, and 3 are resident management units. Again, Please note in this discussion that rental units are critical to providing housing for our lower income residents. And having only 340 rental units in planning is woefully inadequate to serve the needs that our future needs for South Maui. This really needs to be on top of your mind as you move forward in planning. We also have a mixed unit project consisting of 1,250 units. Currently, there are 300 or 400 workforce housing units projected in this project, and the remaining will be market units. Again, this is the list of the projects that we found that we have pending, and that totals almost 3,400 units. Is that me again? Oh my God. I apologize for that. I muted my phone and somehow it's ignoring me. So this is the list of projects we have pending, totals almost 3,400 units. And again, I'm always cautious about throwing around numbers because we've seen a lot of projects not move forward. And they fail to move forward for a number of reasons. Those include economic reasons, financial reasons, and of course, regulatory reasons. But if all of these projects were to move forward, including the almost 300 units we actually have under construction, there would be a total of about 3,700 units represented on this list. So just to wrap this up real quick, Chapter 2.96 of Maui County Code is Maui's county's inclusionary zoning policy. This section of the code requires that every developer provide an equivalent of 25% of the number of lots, homes, or hotel units that are being developed in workforce housing units. Generally, in a straight 2.96 project where 25% of the units are workforce, the market and vacation units would subsidize the reduced sales price or rental price of the workforce units. Projects that are developed for families earning less than 80% of the area median income or have more workforce housing units in it than the minimum almost always require subsidy of some sort, including financial subsidy. They're also very frequently will need to request exemptions or flexibility on some of the county requirements. That includes things like the most popular ones. Well, there's a lot of exemption they can request, but the big one that always comes up that people ask about is flexibility on sidewalks and gutters. And sometimes that means they're asking to not put the sidewalks and gutters in, and sometimes that means that they're asking to put sidewalks and gutters on one side of the street and not on the other. They also ask for exemptions from county permit and assessment fees. And all of these exemptions work together to help those workforce projects pencil out and become financially feasible. I apologize that the information on this slide is so dense, but the bottom line of this slide is that the currently planned housing developments in South Maui appear to be very consistent with the intention of 2.96. And if they're all built, the units needed in the incomes above 80% AMI remain on track to meet the projected need. Again, that's assuming that the projects are built, and the trick is to make sure that they are built. That's not the case for the units that we need below 80% AMI. We are projecting a shortfall in the number of units needed for those residents. And as I mentioned before, those units are typically rental units, and we are very, very short of those in planning in this area, in this market. In order to help ensure that these units are built, we need to make sure, obviously, that there's land that's appropriately zoned to allow for their use. And we also need to provide incentives and financial assistance. I want to mention briefly that these incentives do include those much maligned housing credits that no one likes. But the carrot of receiving housing credits have often been the reason that a 25% workforce home has turned into a 100% workforce project. The housing credits carrot only works, though, if that carrot is valuable and if it's flexible and can be used, and that means that there is a financial market for those credits. If the credits are limited in where they can be used or eliminated entirely, than these projects that would have no incentive to increase the number of workforce units in a project. And that works against your goal of trying to increase the number of workforce units in various projects. Other carrots such as exemptions from certain requirements or bonuses such as increased density also encourage developers to build a higher percentage of workforce units into their projects. It also helps decrease the cost per unit, which increases the odds that they will financially pencil out. Just as a last note, adding requirements always adds cost, so be very cognizant of that. I'm not saying don't use the word require when it's truly important, but use the word carefully. My recommendation, or we would encourage you really to use words like encourage and support whenever possible, rather than require. And then that's everything that I've got or was asked to present. There are, again, another 12 slides, and I'll let you guys read those late at night later with a glass of wine. Mahalo.
Thank you. And then I believe we have Jackie presenting next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Deputy Director Mansell. That was very interesting. So I'm Jackie Takakura. I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning Department. And I was asked to talk about short-term rentals. Now, what I'm actually going to talk about is a little bit of a bigger picture, transient accommodations. And I'll explain the difference in terminology as I go. You'll see this term a lot. Planners love acronyms, TVRs, and that stands for transient vacation rentals. And that's basically the same thing. Page down. Let's see. Okay, so for some context, this is the language from the previous plan and the current draft as they relate to vacation rentals. And I'm not going to read it because it is kind of long, and hopefully you read this already because this went out in advance, but we can always talk about it later. But this part that you see on the left, the 2022 Planning Department draft, we're going to come back to that wording a little bit later in the presentation. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what is a transient. What are we talking about? And these are just some definitions. The one on I guess at my right, is from the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and then the other one is from Maui County Code Title 19. And I have them both here because they're both important. The HTA definition, it's simple, but it's important because HTA is the source of the visitor counts that we read about when the Maui News reports on visitors. And it's real simple. People who come here stay here for at least one night, but less than 1 year. Okay, and then the other one, Maui County Code Title 19. The key parts of our definition in Title 19 is the time frame. People who are using the lodging or dwelling units for less than 180 days. And then the other part that's important is whose permanent address for legal purposes is not the dwelling or lodging unit occupied by them. There are some exceptions, which you can see from the bottom paragraph also. And just to keep in mind, the definition of transient is about to change. We do have a bill for ordinance in the works to update the definition of transient in the Maui County Code, and I will go over that in a bit. And just FYI, the first reading for that bill to update that part of the code is before full council this Friday. So, these transients, where do they stay? Accommodations vary from homes that are rented out to large hotels and condos. And generally, here are some types I'm going to start with the left column, the single-family dwellings. So those are basically houses. As of September 30th, we had 35 permitted short-term rental home permits issued for South Maui and 46 owner-occupied bed and breakfast permits. And those are subject to a permitting process and strict regulations. And just so you know the difference, the main difference is for the short-term rental home, the owner does not live on site versus the bed and breakfast, the owner is on site. That's the main difference of those two. And just FYI, about half of the owners of STRH properties do not live on Maui. And as I said, B&B owners, they are required to live on the property. There's another type of single-family dwellings that may conduct the use, and those are if they are non-conforming. There are some properties out there that can conduct the TVR use, but only if they were conducting the use prior to its prohibition back in 1991. And they would be subject to the rules of our non-conforming use chapter in order to continue that non-conforming use. Generally, you see these types of single-family dwellings conducting this use in residential and rural zoning districts. Maui Meadows is the main rural zoning district here in South Maui. Okay, so let's go to the other column, the right column, hotel use. That's outright allowed, so I don't have numbers for those. Apartment zoning districts, we have a little over 4,400 units, and those are primarily going to be in the condos where the use is allowed by zoning, and if the property meets criteria for this use, and I'm going to go over that in detail in the next two slides. B2, an example of that is Island Surf, on South Kihei Road. And then these other zoning districts, which aren't that, there's not that many in there. For project districts, those would be where sub-districts allow the TVRs as hotel, multifamily condo, and single family. So let's just talk real briefly about the apartment zoning district. And we do have a list of these properties on our website. You can go to them right from our homepage under Hot Topics. As I mentioned, there's 4,449 units in 65 properties. Of these, about 1,500 are within or abutting the sea level rise hazard area. There is certain criteria which limits which properties can have vacation rental use. And these are typically going to be the older buildings because they must have had their permits by 1989. And then they also had to have the use. And they also have to be paying the right taxes. And the vacation rental use is limited to the building envelope at 1989. And why are there so many requirements to continue this use? And that's because the purpose of the apartment district is to provide higher density housing options and occupancy on a long-term rental basis. But because these properties were conducting the use before it became prohibited, they are allowed to continue. Just a note, there is a bill that the County Council just passed. It's a TVR caps bill, and that will impose further restrictions, but the ordinance hasn't been finalized yet. So I'm hesitant to, I'd like to see the exact wording of that ordinance before we talk about that a little bit further. But that is in the works, so that will have an impact on vacation rental expansion. This is just a little bit more about the apartment zoning districts. You can see there's been a lot of action over the years about this district. In a nutshell, apartment buildings built prior to 1991 have always been allowed to make short-term rental uses. So you can see that from 1981 and prior, the use was allowed, and then it became prohibited in 1989, and then in 1991, prohibited again, but with some revisions. 2001, there was the opinion, Minatoya opinion, as it's commonly known. And then in 2014, that opinion became part of the zoning, Maui County Code. And then just in 2020, we closed the loophole for older properties who hadn't started the use to start the use, which basically means no new ones. And so that kind of ended the vacation rental, at least any expansion for properties that could have started but hadn't. Okay. So going to beyond just the apartment zoning district and looking at ordinances that affect vacation rental use as a whole, you can see that there's been lots going on, and I don't want to read this whole thing either, but you can see some key words like fines, caps, moratoriums, and more restrictions. And as I mentioned, November 4th, the County Council passed the permanent caps bill, and the ordinance is pending. My understanding is that it will prohibit expansion in all zoning districts except hotel and B2. But once the final ordinance comes out, I will post that on the website. And so, if this comes up again, we can always go back to it and look at it there. And then just on the bottom, you can see that there's 2 other bills in the works. One is to allow voluntary conversion from short-term to long-term residential in apartment districts. And the other one, as I mentioned previously, is to revise the definitions of timeshare plan and transient. That one on the bottom, what we see in other places is some corporations are buying homes and then selling partial ownerships. And so we like to nip that in the bud, so we have that where these LLC type entities are going to be subject to the rules just like any other type of owner. And then because there's such a shortage of healthcare workers, they're going to be more clearly excluded from the definition of transient. Just a couple of maps. This is in red, all the zoning districts that allow the vacation rental use prior to the CAPS bill. And this includes things like hotel district, B2, BR, just any one of those districts that allow for the use, at least prior to the CAPS bill. So this is Malaya. And these next 3 maps show the zoning districts where vacation rentals may be allowed. The orange districts, that's apartment district. And remember, there's strict criteria for vacation rentals. It's those older buildings that have had vacation rentals for a long time that can. Hotel districts are the brown. B2 is red stripes, and BR is red trellis pattern. Now, as I mentioned, we have that TVR CAPS bill that the council passed on November 4th. And so that's going to change things. So these in the yellow circles are where the vacation rental use can expand. And that is just B2. These other zoning districts like apartment, they can continue, but they cannot expand. Okay, so it'll just be B2 in this Malaya area that can expand. Okay, so this is North Kihei, all the areas where vacation rentals exist, and up until November 4th, or whenever the effective date of that new ordinance, they were allowed to expand. So with the new ordinance, only the ones in the yellow circle can expand. The others, like apartment district, they can continue, but they cannot expand. So you can see in the legend, the ones that have the black line they can exist, but they cannot expand, and then hotel and B2 can expand. And with the expansion is with some restrictions too. So that's changed a little bit. And then the third map is South Maui. Some of the orange apartment districts further south, like Wailea and McKenna side, cannot have vacation rental either because of the conditional zoning or they don't meet the criteria. But some of the others can. So these yellow circles are where, according to the new bill, when it comes out, vacation rental use can expand, and then the X's show where they cannot expand. So. Okay, so let's go back to the proposed community plan language that we looked at in slide 2. In the yellow on the right are some proposed revisions to the South Maui community plan wording. For the first one, 2.2-22, we don't have any changes proposed. 2.2.24, we do have a little bit of proposed revisions to prohibit new units and require development of high-end and luxury homes to provide their required workforce housing on site until adequate housing is established to meet existing needs. And then if you want to consider a new action item proposal, encourage owner occupancy and long-term rental occupancy of residential housing units, and discourage short-term and second home use through real property tax categories and rates. We have seen this recently. I think it was with last year's tax rates where they started changing that to charge higher tax rates for the second home use. So that's all I have, and but we can always come back to anything if we have more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now open up for public testimony, any testimony on these issues and questions to the presenters. So the items we're discussing, they have to be on the agenda today, which is the section of the community plan proposal on actions and policies for livable communities, and then or the discussion of the goals of the goal section of the community plan, the beginning. So anyone from the audience wanting to give oral testimony? Yes. Please state your name and which agenda item you're going to be talking about.
Tom Crowley, testifying on my own behalf. Sorry. That's right. Okay. Tom Crowley here, testifying on my own behalf. Picking up on where Jackie left off to some degree, she defined transients for you, but she didn't define where all the transients stay. A whole lot of them are second homeowners all over in the apartment district, in every residential district. I took a count over here in Kamalani. Are you familiar with the subdivision that was built in North Kihei as an affordable housing project? There were 170 units in there. 60 of those units, 60 of the affordable units that were just built a few years ago are shown as non-owner occupied, not as rentals, not as owner occupied, which they were intended to do. And there's where your housing is going, okay? At all levels, the highest level, the lowest level, you have people purchasing housing and turning it into second homes. Not, and I want to be very clear about this, not short-term rentals, not bed and breakfast. They're not buying them to turn them into short-term rentals. They're strictly buying them to use as their second homes. Now, there's a policy or whatever in here saying, let's stop that. But there's nothing behind it. You know, you're just saying it doesn't do anything, okay? So that's what you got to be tasked with, figuring out how you're going to address that. But last week, if you remember, I brought you some numbers, and I showed you that $180 million of taxation was coming from visitor accommodations in South Maui, and only $9 million was coming from residents of South Maui. So that 20-to-1 ratio between there's where the money's coming from. Converting those properties from vacation rental or second homes into residence is going to cost you a lot of tax money. And then, as you just heard, we have a whole lot of new residents that we have to take care of. So the idea that we can't have any more visitor accommodations isn't going to work, because you're not going to be able to balance the budget at that point. You're going to have to increase these things at the same time. But what I really want you to work on is not allowing our housing in all levels, $200,000 houses up to $20 million houses, turning into the second homes. Now, there is an advantage to the $20 million house being a second home. We charge a very, very high tax rate. There's one that I looked at paying $250,000 a year in property tax. So that's not bad. You know, we're getting a lot of money out of that. And I don't really mind that one being a second home. But the $250,000 house in Kamalani that was supposed to be an affordable house that's now as a second home, that's where we have to, you know, keep that sieve from leaking. And again, not the 46 permitted short-term rentals, which we've spent so much time on, or the 36 or 46 bed and breakfast. Thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any questions from members to the testifier? Yes, Tova.
Thanks for your comments. And good points. Do we know why those Kamalani units, if they were designated for affordable housing, weren't sold to local residents needing a primary?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of background on that. There's a requirement that affordables be offered to the affordable range for a certain amount of time. I forget, 120 days or something like that. And then if they don't sell in that period, they can be sold outside of the affordable. Now, what I don't know, and maybe Deputy Director Munsell knows, is whether they got credit for those being affordables when they weren't sold, to someone affordable. But then there's also been a number of those properties that have already turned around. Person bought them, and then they resold them to somebody else. So, yeah, that's that's how they change.
Real quick, so thank you,
Yeah,
Chair.
go ahead.
This is your second testimony. You always come with good data and good numbers, so I appreciate that. And food for thought, everyone. Unique place needs unique circumstances. Food for thought for future planning.
Any other clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you. Any other testifiers from the audience? Yes, recognizing Kelly King.
Aloha, CPAC members. Thanks for picking this place to meet. It's a lot more comfortable. So I'm testifying as a 40-year resident of South Maui, a 40-year homeowner. And I wanted to just make some comments on some of the things that were said. First of all, in the beginning when you talked about Tom Blackburn Rodriguez stepping down, and I see that he's left the room, but my understanding was that he left because he was resigning because he felt that the mayor-elect should be allowed to appoint his own people. So just in speaking with the Bisson team about this, they are expecting that they will be able to appoint the next person. So I just wanted to put that in your ear, and maybe you can work that out with them. As far as, and I wanted to comment on something that Tom said, is that what the reason why those Kamalani units flipped out, and those were built before I was on the council, but was that short period of time that they had to sell them within the affordable range, or they could flip them into the market range. That time length has been being extended by the current council and the previous council, and could be extended further. That could be a policy decision of this body, that you want a longer period of time for it to be sold in the affordable, because there's a question of how much effort do they make to sell it within that affordable range, knowing that it's going to flip out in 95 days or however long the period used to be. So that's a policy issue. I don't necessarily agree that we have to increase the vacation homes at the same rate that we increase the workforce in affordable homes, so I would be very cautious about that. We need more affordable and workforce homes first. There's a policy in the West Maui community plan that I think you should look at that requires that for every short-term unit, there has to be one workforce or affordable unit. So that's something that would require would be going a step beyond whatever the CAPS bill that just got passed would be, but it's under the purview of this committee to set those kinds of policies and go beyond what the county policy is for this area. And this area, and I've lived here since the 80s and 90s when Kihei was the fastest growing community in the state of Hawaii. And I think that was when Wayne was on the council. We dealt with so much construction, so much noise, so much dust, and traffic, and we're seeing it continue. I don't know if you've ever driven past where they're doing the roundabout now. It doesn't appear to most people that that's going to make traffic better. So, we have to be conscious of what we're doing to our community, and it's kind of frightening to hear the amount of affordable housing that we need to accommodate the people that are going to move here and the people that are going to visit, because in some sense we can control that by limiting that construction. So I just wanted to encourage this body to be very conscientious that you have the ability to set policy beyond what the county policy currently is, policy for our community, for what we need. And thank you for all the work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members to the testifier? Thank you. Next testifier. Please state your name and which agenda item you're talking about.
Aloha, aloha e nā lala hano hano ke ia komike. Ua o ke oni kuoha. I am here to testify generally on the housing item, and I apologize, I don't have the specific number. I work for Hawaii Community Foundation and serve as the director of the House Maui initiative. I'm here with my colleague, Kate Blystone. And I'm here really to introduce ourselves, to speak a little to our work, and to tell you that we're here to work alongside you in whatever way possible. The housing issue is complex. And I think folks will come here saying, hey, solve this issue. You have the power. The truth is that there are a lot of pieces to this. Our council needs to act. Our mayor needs to act. There are higher levels at state and federal agencies that really need to act to make this system produce the housing that we want. And for House Maui Initiative, or the housing that we're wanting is housing that is accessible to local families. A lot of it is described as affordable and workforce housing. We have to admit that many of our local families also need market housing. But the goal is that our families can stay in Hawaii. We do this by partnering with a wide range of stakeholders. And I think, I just want to say I'm not an expert on housing, but we work with a lot of people with knowledge in very specific areas of housing. And our goal is to bring those pieces, those perspectives to bear on the conversations we have to figure out what is the best path forward. I heard some conversation about Kamalani. And there were some solutions and some talk and certainly discussion of some of the challenges around Kamalani. One of the sides of the challenges was that our families weren't prepared and mortgage ready for those units. Yeah, and so that's one of the areas that we're working on with House Maui. We're working with our partners at Hawaiian Community Assets to get our families prepared in all AMI levels so that when the units are available, it won't be a matter of more time on the market. We have the families that are there and ready. Halikaiola here is a great example of us preparing our families for home ownership. That doesn't mean that these other challenges of increased inflation and whatnot haven't also impacted our ability to do this, the work that we're doing. So I look forward to working with you folks, and I think my colleague here will be up next. We have a handout, but I don't know if that's allowed for us to pass out. And whether the chair would allow that.
Absolutely, you can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Have Daniel?
Aloha and mahalo for your testimony. You spoke about the Kamalani project. When they were offering those homes as affordable housing, did you have families come in to see you to help prepare themselves to be mortgage ready? And did you feel that those families that came in to see you had enough time to prepare, or they should have had maybe additional time? And should they have additional time in the future? Because I would think it would be better to have more time than less, right? If you have the option, right?
Yeah. So to your first question, we weren't up and running as a program. And also to give some credit to the county, they're going halvesies with the Hawaii Community Foundation to support this, to make sure that we can get our families ready. To your other point, though, what I'm finding, because I've been learning a lot on this job as well, the trade-offs, right? So the longer period that it's on the market, there are trade-offs with the developers and the financing and sort of the unknown variables that they have to deal with on their end. The best approach is that the period remains short, but we ensure that we have an ample supply of ready buyers. So that seems like it kind of balances the trade-offs pretty well.
Follow-up question, Chair. So how much time would you recommend?
I don't have a specific answer for that. Yeah, thank you.
Kioki? Oh, sorry, Wayne first.
What is your name?
Keoni Kuoha.
Keoni.
Yo.
Does your organization have a track record that you could show this body? What you've done in the past?
We've been working on this project for about 2 years. I've been working on it for 1 year, and I can come back with some of our updates and reports to give you a sense of what we've been doing.
Where else have you been doing these homes?
Housing work, nowhere. Hawaii Community Foundation doesn't. This is the first time we're working in housing, but it's really working in community advocacy around housing and working on the different pieces, trying to bring our stakeholders together. Thank you.
Okay. And Kyoki.
Yeah, aloha, mahalo for your testimony. One of my questions was answered by Wayne as far as how long you've been doing this. So just comments then after that. I know when my wife and I were a young couple, we were buying a house, we didn't know where to start and how to do and how to get pre-qualified and all that stuff. So I think it's a really good service. And as a parent of 2 young adults, you know, they should be preparing, because when things come up and you're not prepared, you miss the boat. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Mahalo.
Any other questions, clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you.
Thank you.
And next testifier.
Aloha mai kakou. I'm Kate Blystone. Some of you might recognize me because I used to lead the South Maui Community Plan update when I worked at the county. So it's nice to see you all in real life with legs and bodies, because we did a lot of Zoom meetings. But right now I work with Keoni on the Hawaii Community Foundation's House Maui initiative. And I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about what I handed out. These are a few pages from a plan that we put together called the South Maui Affordable and Resource Housing Plan. And in this plan, we kind of paint the picture of what the housing situation is. And forgive me, these are beautiful 11 by 17, $24 a piece for printing. So I give you a couple pages so that you can scan the QR code on the front and go see it online. It's just as beautiful online, and you can zoom in. But this plan really kind of lays out the housing situation as our work over the last 2 years has uncovered. And it also zooms in specifically on South Maui and the history and the potential projects, some of which Linda talked about earlier. And so this could be a resource for you as you're having conversations, having gone through the West Maui Community Plan with the staff here. I think you're probably not going to finish tonight, and you'll have more conversations about this as you go along. And so I just want to echo what Keoni said. We're here as a resource for you. If you read this and you have questions, we're happy to come back and talk with you about it more. And I just want to thank you in closing. This is hard work, and it's important what you're doing. And some of your faces I've seen from the very beginning, and I appreciate you so much for putting your time in. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Kate? Daniel?
Nice to see you, Kate.
Nice to see you.
I wonder where you went.
I'm right here.
So, in 1 or 2 sentences, how can we solve the affordable and workforce housing crisis in Maui? Yeah, maybe give us some direction there.
Yeah, I've got that for you. No problem. It's going to be a lot of things. You're going to have to do a lot of things. I think Keoni started saying that. There's a lot of pieces. There's things you can do in the community plan, write good policy, but more important, write good actions that lead to good outcomes. Policies are only reviewed when projects are coming up, but actions should lead to outcomes. And so if you want a long-range planner answer to the question, focus on actions in your project. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Any other questions, clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you. And do we have any more testimony from the? Yes. please step forward and state your name and which agenda item you're talking about.
Sorry for my noisy slippers. Can I ask a question before I start my point? If I have a comment? First of all, I thought that, oh. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandy Corpuz. I'm a community member, and I work on the Waipu'olani Beach Reserve project with Rooted Kekahimeka Aina. So I'm involved in a lot of things that I thought was going to be talked about today within the 2.2. Are we only talking about housing? Or are we talking about all of them?
Today, we're only talking about housing unless we get really, really lucky and get through it quickly.
Okay.
I don't think we will.
Okay, so what I wanted to say about housing is that I live in a community or on a street that only has one way in, one way out. And there were some housing projects that have been proposed all around us in different areas, but all around us. Kind of like landlocking us in, so to say. We only have the one way in, one way out, and then the housing project, Savio project, was proposed to use our infrastructure. So no new infrastructure was going to be built. So my suggestion for today and my plea to you guys is to not have any more construction done in the area between Waipu'olani and Kulani Hakoi, because unless or until the infrastructure is complete. We still don't have our north-south collector road, which has been proposed for a very long time. And I'd like you to look at the 1998 community plan before you make any decisions here, because a lot of these things were already said 20 years ago, and they were never done. They were never completed. They weren't withheld. And so it makes me very sad that I want to be part of a solution that maybe never happens. And you guys all spending a lot of time doing all this work and listening to testimonies and talking with all these people. I know how that is, and I've seen it firsthand. And then to come to the end and it not happen is very frustrating and very sad. In the 1998 community plan, it actually said that no new construction would be done until infrastructure was improved. And no infrastructure has been improved at all, as far as I know. And we're talking about our oldest communities here. So what are we really doing in this South Maui planning if we're not actually doing what was proposed to be done by the community members 20 years ago? I'm sure some of you were actually involved in that. So it seems kind of like backwards to even go forward with anything else until it's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, clarifying questions to the testifier? Mike?
Good to see you, Randy, and thank you for your work along the seashore. That's been a long-term need, so thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
I don't know whether this is encouraging or not, but many of us, when we were vying to be on this group, was for that very reason, that we too read the 98 plan and about the infrastructure concurrent with development. And we have been asking that question. We asked former mayors why that was done, and it was just shrugged off like it didn't mean a thing. So that's what stimulated a lot of us. And I said it in my introduction, and Rob, our chair, has mentioned that that's what we're looking for, is implementation. We don't want to do anything that's not going to be implemented. So I just wanted to reinforce what you're asking for is what many of us are too. Mahalo.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
having to do
Yes.
with that.
Go ahead.
Also, in the 1998 plan, community plan, they talked about a government beach reserve path, which is what our nonprofit and some of our other community members and groups have been trying to get done for the last 20 years. I noticed, that's why I came here today, or tonight, because I noticed that that was in, that is within the 2.2 of this, of your agenda. But just now, when I was sitting back there, I noticed that my actual grant is listed in your paperwork. So if anybody has any questions about grant 5522, and the work that we've been doing or that we propose to do and have not been able to do because the transfer has never happened, please contact me and I will be happy to talk about it. Thank you. Yes.
First to Everett, and then Daniel.
What was the size of that grant?
What do you mean?
The amount?
Cost? 63,000.
Okay, and that was a county grant?
Yes.
Thank you.
Daniel.
Aloha, Brandy.
Aloha.
Nice to have Nama'u Place in the house.
Thank you.
Yeah, with reference to the Waipulani Beach Reserve project, can you give me an idea of how many acres of land is supposed to be transferred from the state to the county?
24 acres of land on the beach, government beach reserve. It's roughly from Ma'alaya all the way to Keaweekapu. Should be. It's like, you know, it's got, there's houses, there's condos, there's rocks, you know, things in the way of it, but it's there, and it's supposed to be there for our community to enjoy, to be able to do the things that you spoke of, you know, to go and fish and do things with your family and things like that. But sadly, most people don't know it even exists because there's so many houses and, you know, big houses. So the pathway, to me, is the only way that it will, people will start to come back, people will get have the kuleana to take care of this area. A lot of people have gone away and don't even want to come to Kihei. A lot of my friends and family, they're like, I'm not even coming to Kihei, to their beaches, because it's just, you know, overloaded with tourists, or they don't even know that they can go to these places. And it's a beautiful resource that we should be able to enjoy. And without the pathway, there's no clear-cut pathway. There's no clear evidence that we can go. I mean, we even found that there is a pool. Somebody built a pool that is actually on the government reserve, partly. So technically, we could go swim in half their pool. But, you know, we're not going to do that. And people are so respectful in Hawaii that most of the time, I mean, I remember walking down the beach and going, ooh, we can't go over there. You know, that's somebody else's property. And then I found out a couple of years later, no, we can go there. We can enjoy there just like anybody else. But it needs to be, it needs the path. We need the path.
So another clarifying question. So the grant you're talking about, is that an Office of Economic Development administered grant?
That was a county grant.
Yes, it's an Office of Economic Development.
Through County Councilwoman Kelly King.
So I can just say that all those grants are being obstructed.
Or being a what?
Obstructed, and not being distributed. So you're not alone.
Oh no.
I'm sure that makes you feel better.
The grant was distributed.
She did get
I did get the grant. I did do the work.
Yes.
But the transfer has never been.
That's what I'm saying.
It still
same
hasn't
thing.
happened. So
that's what I'm saying. Same thing.
Can't do anything with the. We can't make the planning department or the people who are supposed to do the transfer. We can't make them do it. So that's the bottom line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question from Wayne.
Hi, Brandy.
Hi.
Was the land ever offered to the county by the state?
20 years ago. Sure was. Executive order, too, 10 years ago. And it's still
It was
been
an
just sitting there.
EO from
Executive order, yes. It's still sitting there.
Maui County
24
has
acres
the
of land.
EO.
Yeah. Yeah. I just spoke with the DLNR and was told that they finally got some sort of signed document that should make it be transferred. But like I said, it's 20 or 10 years ago, like, so nobody can say whether it's actually gonna happen or it's not gonna happen. So that's kind of the frustration of it, it's like, just make it happen. I was told that it needs to be cleaned up. It hasn't been cleaned up. That area had not been cleaned up for 10 years, the area that we took on. And we couldn't clean the whole 4 acres that is between the Veterans Hall or the Veterans Center and the Waipualani bathrooms. We couldn't do the whole thing. It's kind of a big deal, especially when you're dealing with state, county, all these different oceanic officers, there's just, not officers, but you know what I mean, all these different departments. Nobody can kind of like get along maybe or something. They don't work well together, perhaps.
Mr. Chairman, obviously somebody in this county dropped the ball. And if the state offered us the beach reserve land, I would like to ask our legal corporation counsel where this EO is sitting right now. Maybe Everett knows.
Everett?
No, I wish I knew, but I'm not sure it's a county issue. It could be a state issue. We've been trying to give a playground that the kids have been using at a school for over 20 years to the DOE, and same thing. It's it just doesn't get done, and it's it's subdivided. It's clean title. We've been trying to give them their playground. We don't want the responsibility of kids. We don't want to own the land where a bunch of kids are playing. It's a liability for us. And we've been trying to give it, and it's the same nonsense. It's they say they want it, but we just can't transfer it to them. In your case, they say they want to give it to you, and for some reason they can't. They just don't do it. So I feel your frustration.
So can I request that you email to South Maui at we are what's the address? South Maui at we are South Maui at mauicounty.gov. We are South Maui at mauicounty.gov, and then we'll look into that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Any more questions from the Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, now that we have Kelly King's ear listening, maybe you could do the research for this group of 13.
What she's talking about, if you need further details. Do you want me to respond? Because what she's talking about is outside the grant project she did. This is something that was unearthed through the grant.
Yeah, they're two separate issues. Yes, two separate issues. Okay, so if you could do that, then we'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody left their glasses over there by me.
Oh, that might be mine.
And yes. Oh, your glasses. Any other testifiers on today's agenda? Yes, you can step forward, say your name and the agenda topic.
My name is Elizabeth Voigt. I'm a resident here in Maui. I have sort of a procedural question, just like the prior speaker. My question relates to 2.2, but it's not specific to affordable housing. It's relative to parks and the need for more pickleball courts, essentially. That's really what I wanted to bring up. So I don't know if this is the right forum to talk about that or not.
Be great if you could come back when that's actually up again. We discussed the policy section of that last time, but we ran out of time to talk about the actions. So that could definitely be an action. We need more pickleball courts. So I'd appreciate, even better, at any time you can send written testimony to wearesouthmaui@mauicounty.gov. And that way it becomes part of the record and we make sure that we discuss it at our next meeting.
Oh, okay.
That would be even better. You can come and testify in person as well.
Okay.
But that way, for sure, regardless of when you send it, we'll take it into account.
Okay, and it could be like an actual agenda item then?
It will be an agenda item. We'll be returning to that. It's just we don't have time today. 'Cause
Okay.
we have to focus on the housing today.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testimony from the audience? Okay, declaring that public testimony closed, and we'll take our 10-minute break. Was that not 10 minutes? I didn't actually notice when the break started. Okay, so we are going to start on section 2.2, which is policies around housing. And I would appreciate if you could put up on the screen the document I sent, which is it's called draft section 2.2, because it includes both the proposal and the testimony that's come in, the written testimony that's come in.
I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about. Do you want something from the South Maui website that is uploaded?
Yes. Comment?
Rob, I would make a suggestion that when, as we go through this, it would help us older, slower guys if we refer to the page number.
Okay.
Quite often that I find that helpful. I can get there quicker instead of I'm looking for 2.1 or 1.2. If I hear the page number, as old eyes can follow that find that much quicker. Thank you.
Thank you.
CPAC draft section 4.4-2, under the CPAC member handouts. There you go. Good. And then scroll up to the housing section. I think that was it. It's where we left off last time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said it wrong. This is actually the actions. I want the other one, the 2-2 rather than the 4-2. We'll get to this hopefully today.
You guys all have this printout in your handouts as well.
So let's see. We left off. I think we left off to start with 2.2.16. Is that right? 15? Okay. So we have 15 left. Okay. So 2.2.15. So last time we tried to do 5 at a time. Let's give it a shot, see how that works. So that would be 2.2.15 through 2.2.19. And notice that I inserted there, if you scroll up a little bit, there were two items that kind of fit in there from Stan Franco in the written testimony that we received. They're in orange in your package. So I'm going to read these anyway. I think reading it won't add much time to this. And then while I'm reading, you can think about it, and you may have some comments on these things. So 2.2.15, this is page 37. Support the development of pedestrian-oriented, complete communities that meet residents' needs for daily living by providing a mix of land uses, housing close to jobs, services, schools and recreation, and convenient and safe mobility options, including walking, biking, and transit options. That's a mouthful. 2.2.16, require affordable housing projects, including projects using the Chapter 201H, Hawaii Revised Statutes, or Chapters 2.96 or 2.97, Maui County Code process, to be near job centers, schools, transit and services, and include pedestrian-oriented design elements to create walkable and livable communities for all. It's Cody.
For 2.215, I was wondering if I could add something in there. Instead of support the development of pedestrian-oriented, put require that new development be pedestrian-oriented and comprise complete communities that meet residents' needs for daily living, etc.
Thank you for that. You can certainly propose that, and we can even make that change if the committee feels that way. I suggested that we don't move the decision until we talked about all 5 because it may impact the other items as well. Everett? I'm going to keep reading just to get through these, and we'll go back to them. I inserted in between those just so we discuss them, because a testifier can't make a proposal. I mean, can't make a motion, but they provide material which might be worth considering. And I asked actually Stan to look at the plan and come up with ideas that might help the housing section. So he says, follow the County of Maui's comprehensive affordable housing plan in developing homes for residents of South Maui. And he says, present all housing projects to a citizens committee of South Maui, like the Kihei Community Association, for their comments before submittal to the County of Maui for approval. Daniel, you have a comment?
Is that being proposed as a possible additional policy?
Someone sitting here has to make that proposal. This is just an idea at this point.
Oh, that's the intent.
The next one is 2.2.17.
Sorry, Chair. I did have a comment on 2.2.16. I wanted to propose an additional policy. It's very similar to this one, and I don't have a handout for it, but it would be something along the line, require affordable housing projects, including projects using the Chapter 201H, Hawaii Revised Statutes, or Chapters 2.96 or 2.97 Maui County Code process. And this is where I would insert. So that sentence is the same, and that I would insert something to require. Yeah, so anyway, sorry. The new sentence would be require affordable housing projects. Oh, sorry, I wrote it down in my handwriting. It's awful. It's one of them. I didn't do really well in handwriting in English. Chair, why don't you go on and let me figure out what I wrote here, and then come back to me.
Yeah, my intent was to give you time, so I'm just reading to give you time here. 2.2.17 says, I mean, we're not making decisions, we're just reading through this and thinking about it. 2.2.17 says, encourage a greater percentage of affordable housing than required by law in all residential projects. Oh, yeah, and then the proposal from the planning department is to remove the second, than required by law, unless the project is to be developed exclusively as an affordable housing project. Affordable housing obligations must be met within the boundaries of the community plan sub-area. Credits may not be used. So I just want to point out that we had kind of an opposing opinion in oral testimony earlier today, something to think about. And then 2.2.18 says, support missing middle housing types, multi-unit or clustered housing types, compatible in scale with single-family houses such as ohana, duplex, triplex, fourplex, townhouse, courtyard apartments, bungalow court, and live-work units, and simple-style single-family homes to meet the growing demand for diversity of housing options and affordability. And one more. 2.2.19, prioritize infrastructure improvements for 100% affordable housing developments for resident households earning 100% AMI and below that are supported by the community and the community plan map and policies. So I'm opening these things up for discussion. I'm not going to make any motion. So at some point, someone will need to make a motion to adopt these or to reject them.
Okay, Chair, I deciphered what I wrote. So the language, it could be a new policy, but it's very similar to 2.216. Require affordable housing projects, including projects using the Chapter 201H, Hawaiian Revised Statutes, or et cetera, 2.9 sign Maui MCC process, and to insert after MCC process to be spread out equitably throughout the South Maui Community Plan sub-areas, with the exception of Ahihi and Kanaio, like guava jam, to create diverse communities economically and geographically in all South Maui residential areas. It could be guava jelly. It has to be guava jelly. I don't know, Karen, did you get that? You want to repeat it?
Require affordable housing projects, including projects using the Chapter 201H Hawaii Revised Statutes and Chapters 2.96 or Chapter 2.97 Maui County Code process to be spread out equitably through the South Maui community area like guava jelly.
Yeah. And the rest was like guava jelly to create diverse communities economically and geographically throughout. Was it throughout? In all South Maui residential areas. Okay, I think that's it. You can scratch the guava jelly. I wasn't serious.
Yes, Tova.
Also pertaining to 2.2.16 on page 37. I apologize, I can't remember whose testimony it was, but we did have testimony submitted that suggested the language requiring affordable housing to be near job centers might prove to be restrictive and eliminate any growth bulk of the highway. So I thought that was kind of a good point, because what does that even mean to be near job centers? That really limits where you could have affordable housing. And I don't think that's the intention of this. Something for discussion. Thank you.
I think that is a good point. But on the other hand, if we're talking about developments, then I think we're talking about mixed developments. So as we're building new housing, we should be building retail and grocery stores and schools and other things that are needed for that as well. So hopefully there'll be jobs as well, not just places to sleep. Everett?
I think if we could, instead of having require, support.
Brian?
I would agree with both Tova and Everett in the context that, especially with what Daniel put in, which I am fine with, but I think what you've added will make it, by saying it's required so that you have full diversity, that's going to be, I would think, a very, very challenging approach by making it required versus making it either promote or support. I think there's going to be places where it just isn't going to work if it's going to be required.
Chair. Brian, are you talking about my proposal or the
Yes.
one that's existing?
Well, because you added it was the additional verbiage that you added.
Yeah, I was suggesting that as a separate proposal.
Separate, okay, I'm sorry.
Policy.
Oh, sorry.
Just a comment. I think in that case, Tova's and Everett's and Brian's comments would apply to both.
Correct.
Wayne?
I like the word require. It carries a lot more clout. It only allows whoever's in charge to speculate, and I'm sure it can be challenged. Support or whatever. It's too wishy-washy. We got to use language that I think our corporation council can defend.
Everett?
Wayne, I disagree with you, and I respect what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. My take on it is it just empowers NIMBYism. It just empowers opposition to housing. Whereas if you say support, it's positive and we're trying to create housing. Whereas if you say require, it just gives that next door neighbor who doesn't want the housing next to him something to stand on. So that's why I'm suggesting support.
Go ahead.
Everett, I don't want to argue. I just don't like the word "not in my backyard." For too long on Maui, we've allowed all these big subdivisions in Wailea to come up and be swallowed up by monster $1 million homes. Where is the regular guy like me or my friends allowed to live near the very rich? Are you telling me I don't belong in your backyard? I don't like what the connotation is.
Actually, I think I'm saying the opposite. I mean, you try to build an affordable housing project, and people come against it. You try to build a market housing project, people come against it. You try to build a luxury housing project, people come against it. And anytime you use the word require, it gives people who don't want change, who don't want housing near them, who don't want development near them, it gives them something to stand on. Whereas if you say support, and support applies to affordable, it applies to market, it applies to luxury. We need housing, period. We should be supporting housing across the whole spectrum of housing. Not just affordable, not just luxury, not just market. We need it all. Our community is made up of people of every single income level, and we need housing to serve and provide housing for every single income level. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to say in any way that people can't live. I'm trying to say the opposite. I'm trying to say people have the right, and we should be providing as a community, we should be providing housing opportunities across the whole spectrum.
So I'm not sure that this 2.2.16 really is saying that it's not saying really that. I mean, perhaps the new one that Daniel is saying is proposing suggests the location of the exact location of a new development. But what this is saying really is just that we shouldn't be putting people up at the top of Mauka, far away from any services, not far away from jobs, from grocery stores, from walking paths, from schools. I think that's what this is saying, and I think that's a really good thing. And I kind of lean towards Wayne's approach here, that we should require this, because if it just says support, it's not going to happen. It'll happen sometimes. Yeah. So this is, I think that this one, 2.2.16, as I read it, is about what do we want our new affordable housing projects to look like? Are they going to be slums, or are they going to have these new things which we think are really, really important, like schools, transit, services, walkable, livable communities? Them also. Just go ahead, Edward.
Wearing my developer hat, trying to develop affordable housing. The best place to do it is on cheap property. And the least expensive property in South Maui is Mauka of the Highway. And it's not close to, currently, it's not close to shopping or many jobs, but it's affordable and it's easier to build there. The numbers work there. The numbers work better there, I should say.
Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I'm not reading this as saying only put affordable housing in Makai of the Highway. I see this as when we're building new residential areas, they should have these features. They should have jobs, schools, transit, and services, pedestrian-oriented design elements. They shouldn't be slums. I think that's how I read this.
Okay, so just so I understand, so the developer guy builds affordable housing, let's say on the Halikaiola project. So no more schools nearby, no more get the gas station across the street. So I'm trying to figure out, like, because where you gotta, whatever open space get left to build affordable homes, how are you going to put all those services in that area if no other room? I don't know how that works. You know, if that makes sense. Because you're going to ask the developer to put all these services requirements in there. But if you're in Halikaiola, you cannot do, it's not close to a school, job centers, or maybe across the street that, yeah, but get what I'm saying? It's kind of, so I just trying to piece that together. It's just my own opinion.
You could be right, but like I said, my interpretation, I'm thinking about new developments like, Mauka, the highway. What will they look like? Will they be complete projects, including places where people can work and walk and take the bus or whatever? Or are they going to be just sleepers? Maybe someone from the planning department can clarify what the intent is there, what the thinking is there.
The thinking is what you're saying, Rob. It's so that we don't build slums away from everything, so that we build walkable, bikeable communities that you can actually live in and not just a place to sleep. Suburbs are not as comfortable as they sound. You have to get in a car to go places. This is saying that you could change the wording a little bit, maybe to say to be near job centers and transit to schools and services. So that would change it. That would make it so you just have to be near jobs and a little bit more of a complete community. If we continue to develop the way we are, it's not a livable community. But this is your community, so it's your decision.
Daniel?
So we're talking about Christmas future here, not the ghosts of Christmas present. I mean, things are already built and they're built where they are, but we're talking about the future, how we envision what the future will look like, future affordable housing projects, and we envision them having these basic infrastructures that are outlined in this policy. So, yeah, there are affordable housing projects being built now that may not have these amenities. But we're talking about the future, right? That hasn't happened yet, that we're trying to create with our words.
Okay,
Chair. Yeah. I like the way it sounds as it is. I understand your points, Everett. And I agree with the way you're interpreting it. I see it that way, as well as Karen. So I like the way it sits as stands. It's short but sweet. And also, if we think about some of the problems we face today, it's because we've done things in the same old, same old. So if we don't change the way we've done things, we're not going to see any positive progress. And I get, when you wear the developer hat and those kind of things, I'm obviously not a developer. I'm just Kikioka here. But when I look around at some of the problems that we have and we've faced and we're going to face, did we learn from things from the past? And are we going to implement those learnings in the future? That's where I stand with that and some of my thoughts. Yeah. Needs and wants, right? I mean, what is affordable to you and you and you might be completely different spectrums. So prioritatively, people need affordable housing, right? I don't see what properties in Wailea will be affordable to who. I mean, that's my thoughts. Mahalo.
Jennifer first, and then Mike.
Thanks. To your point, Kioke, absolutely we need housing. So when we're having a policy that says require, there's the problem. So we're trying to build housing and we're trying to make it available to everybody. And when you create a policy that says required, especially in an affordable housing sentence or policy pertaining to affordable housing, if we don't look at it and learn from our experiences how developers cannot proceed, then we're going down the same path, because we're putting up more restrictions by putting the word require. I get it. If you don't make it strong, it's never going to be done. But I think we got to choose where we put these required sentences and words.
Right. Thank you so much for that thoughts. I don't know how many meetings ago it was, but that was some of the comments made by the old Kihei McKenna plan, was that some of the language was, a little vague and not so firm. So I agree where and when, and we can disagree on where that is to be put. But again, if we're going to learn from the old plan about how many things weren't implemented for whatever reasons, I mean, politically or whatnot, who will ever know, right? But again, the language, the choice of, I think is, but thank you. Yeah.
Of these 5 items that we're looking at, we have one says support, next one says, and then one says encourage, one says support, one says prioritize. So only one out of these 5 that actually says require. So it is pretty narrow. Brian? Oh, I'm sorry. It was Mike first and then Brian.
I'm with the required group. I think that's been the problem, that when it's vague, if the stronger the language, the more effective it can be. Every time it's a vague language, it's interpretation, and it gets swayed. So I go with the required. As Rob just pointed out, we're not doing it on everything, but we are doing it on some things. And also, wherever we build, that's part of what we've all mentioned so frequently, is the transportation infrastructure is the problem. When Vernon mentions that Kiola is not near the school, it isn't near the school now because of the system we have, that you have to get in a car and drive. So now it becomes a challenge for a family. Now we got to drive the kids to school. If we had that north-south collector road there with the greenway, the kids could walk or bike the mile or whatever it is to the schools. So that's that whole concept of that we've discussed many times, is that we have to have the infrastructure concurrent with the development. And we see it didn't happen, and we see the failure that brought about. So that's why I said for the last 10 years, the one favorite item from our community that came to the KCA was, we need this north-south collector road. It's something that can be done. There's a dirt path there. There are other challenges like the mud floods. Yeah, but that's a big, harder, difficult project to fix quickly. Building a road isn't a major project, and that's just one part of the infrastructure that would make this, when you look at a project and you say, okay, is it near schools? Is it near businesses? Is it near recreation? Well, it can't be, everyone can't be near, like 2 blocks away from everything. But if it's a mile or a mile and a half away, and there's a reasonable way to get there without using a car, then by my standards, then it is near to it. Thank you.
Thanks. So I guess, Everett, this question is kind of directed to you, just being a developer, so education on my part. By saying that they have to be required to be able to be job centers and by schools, would that not deter developers from saying, we're just not going to move forward with an affordable project, because what we'd have to be able to do to make those connections and all of that infrastructure just wouldn't become cost prohibitive? So are we kind of shooting the opportunities to build affordable housing by putting that type of requirement in?
That's exactly where I'm coming from. I mean, this is ideal, right? And this is desirable. But if by saying require, if there's a piece of property, I think housing is more important. I think housing, period, is more important than housing, not having housing because it's not close to job centers, schools, or transit. I'd rather have housing than go without it just because it's not close, because someone might have to get in a car. So by putting require in here, that gives NIMBYs a great opportunity to say, well, you know what, it's not near housing, it's not near a school, so No, it shouldn't be approved. I think having housing is more important. Having affordable housing in this instance is more important. So that's why I was suggesting support.
Thank you.
Tova?
That seems like a great way to try to tease out what this means. So, I thank you for the insight into that. Would it be appropriate to have the flip side of insight into it? Is there an appropriate person from the planning department who could say, if someone came to them and said they want to do the affordable housing neighborhood, I forget the name of the one that's right around the corner from us. Kiola, would they look at this policy if someone had come for that parcel and say, oh, no, sorry, we're not going to allow that land use based on the language as it's currently written?
So in those kind of situations, the planning department is not the final body to make that decision. It could be a planning commission, it could be county council, depending on who has the authority to approve that project. But the planning department could call out that policy. The people could call out that policy. As you're saying, like a NIMBY could hone on one thing and say, but it says required to be by, let's pick school. Because you're saying all of these things. You're not saying or, you're saying all. So, yes. I mean, at the end of the day, we would review it against these policies. Then ultimately, it's up to whoever that approving body to decide whether they're going to, look at this and say, no, we're denying it, or you know what, under the merits of what's being proposed, we're still going to approve it. They still have that authority. One thing while I have the mic, I'm going to grab it. One thing I just want to let all of you know, I'm in plan implementation. I do the implementation reports every year, and I keep hearing how we haven't implemented the 1998 plan, haven't implemented it. And I just want to point out to everybody that of all the policies that are in that plan, 17 or 24% are done, 20 or 34% are in progress, 12 or 21% are ongoing, and only 16% were completely never touched. So sometimes things get put in the plan, they start to do something, funds change, community outrage change, whatever it is, it may stop. I mean, we're talking 1998. It's been a long time. So I just wanted to share that with everybody because I think there's a misconception that things aren't being done. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Look how many things we've done, right? I mean, okay, some haven't. Some died. Some don't make sense anymore. It just doesn't make sense. It's old. It's outdated. Yeah, it's not going to get done. Maybe there's a reason for it. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. So sorry. I had the opportunity and I took it.
Yeah, so I have a very different take on that because I also looked at the 1998 Kahima Community Plan actions. And my take is a couple of them are duplicates. 30 of them have definitely not been implemented, no question at all. 7 have definitely been implemented, 7 out of the 69. 19 have been partially implemented. 4 of them are very vague, so it's really hard to tell, has it been implemented or not? I mean, like support, okay, it's supported, but has it been done? And then 9, I don't know, because it's just unclear whether they've been done or not. So, and many of the things which have not been done at all are very, very important. They're things we'll be putting again into this plan because we really want them, and Kihei would look very different if they had been implemented back then. So I think actions are important, but we're still on the policies at this point. and I think this item, I'm really glad we're having this conversation because it is a very relevant discussion, and I fully understand where Everett's coming from in that argument. But I think this point especially, that 2.2.16 and to some extent also the new one that Daniel's proposing, These are about what do we want our future Kia to look like? Do we want to have people with less money living in places where they don't have access to walkways, to bus, to schools, to these other things? It's okay. It's affordable housing. It's better than nothing. Let them be happy with that. Or do we want to build a Kihei which is more equitable, where all these things are built in, where we have the chance? We have land which has not been built. We can do it. We can't do anything about Kaiola. We have to either accept it the way it is or not build it. But Mauka, the highway, we can do it. We can decide what that land should look like. That's what this is about, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, here's a challenge. I'm sick and tired of hearing people make excuses why they don't, and maybe we should think about it. If I was a busboy working in Wailea, I would hope that I have the same chance of living in Wailea, next to the shopping center, where you find a piece of dirt that I can live in dignity on Maui. Are we punishing those of us that can't afford it? Are you looking at something external when there's a busboy working for 20 years, busted his okole, work hard, and now not given a chance to live in an affordable housing unit? Everett, I respect your honesty about being a developer, but I want to disagree with you, because for too long we've accepted the point that if you can afford it, you don't deserve to live in my district. It is almost a slap in the face to me, being born in America, fighting for my country, to in Vietnam, to have to see us make these decisions when we know better in our hearts that we're not doing the right thing. Thank you.
I have a feeling we're not going to make it through all the policies today. But this is a really, really good and very important discussion. I would be curious to hear if anyone else feels that we should include one or both of Stan's proposals. And maybe even a comment from the planning department if they have one on following the County of Maui's comprehensive affordable housing plan. And I want to say, just for information, the second one, present all housing projects to Assistance Committee of South Maui, like the Kihei Community Association, that is pretty much in progress. It's not a requirement currently, but most housing projects in South Maui are encouraged by the Planning Commission to request a review from the Kihei Community Association, and they do so. And I think it's a valuable process. Mike?
And yes, most projects do in South Maui, not all, but most do come to the KCA to get our input. And of course, it's only suggestions. They don't have to do anything. Some come to us, in my opinion, some come to us just to get a rubber stamp, to get a check mark and say, oh yeah, we spoke to the community, and they may disregard all our recommendations. So there's some of that, but there are others who come honestly at the very beginning, which is what we always ask them to do, is to come at the beginning. We can't make changes. If you've already come in, everything is set, and say, do you like it? Well, what if we don't? Well, it's too bad. It's already done. But it does have some effect. And more recently, now that we have the South Maui Advisory Committee, that's something that is still an advisory group. It only advises the Planning Commission, but it's one more step forward that developers are going to the KCA and then also going to this quasi-government group as well. So it does make progress, and of course I have a very biased point of view because I've been with the KCA for quite some time. But I think when we get other people saying that, and for years in general the planning department had recommended that. There was a time when some said, well, we can't name anybody, we can just tell them go to the community. But that seems to have gone away. So I just wanted to voice those 2 points. Thank you.
Everett?
On his second recommendation regarding the community input, I like it. I don't think we should specifically call out Kihei Community Association, and there's Malaya Community Association, there's Kihei Community Association, there's Wailea Community Association, there's McKenna Community Association. So I think the appropriate community association, wherever the project's located. But I think it's a good, I think it should occur, and I think it's a good recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you, Everett. Just to clarify, so in other words, if there's projects like near where their jurisdiction would be more, like obviously if there's a project in Maui, you wouldn't want, necessarily to have the Kihei community associations. Right. Yeah, totally support that. Yeah. Just going back really quick to language again, I just wanted to put this out there and then I'll be done with it. I personally would rather see the harder verbiage and then have it an exception made due to needs. Like you're saying, it can still be approved even though there's that requirement verbiage, correct? Then the other way around, have it be kind of soft and then we go, oops, we should have made it a little harder. So I'm just kind of sticking firm on that, but thank you.
Brian?
So I completely understand what you're saying, Hugo. My concern is that you're going to get the NIMBYs stepping up saying, nope, it says required, you don't have a school close enough, you don't have, and it's going to put a complete halt to doing the affordable housing. And that's my concern, is that we're going to be putting something in place that's going to bring things to a complete screeching halt when people want to object to it. I think we're all trying to go for the same.
100%.
I think we all
need
thing.
affordable housing, and there needs to be exceptions made. Like you can't just pick and choose a piece of land right next to Kihei High School. I get it, right? So, but I'm trying to be open-minded to it. But I'll be honest with you. There's distrust from things in the past, broken promises, things that are dangled, taken away. People agree with it, and then we're left holding the short end of the stick. So. I would rather see the more firm verbiage and then exceptions made where there's absolute need, completely, 100%, than the other way around.
Would something along the lines of required as practical, or as maybe not? That's not maybe not the right word, but
yeah.
Because there's.
Back to
Jennifer
what
has a
Kathleen was
proposal.
saying. Well, I'm just reiterating what you were saying. We're saying all of these have to be there. You made something very practical 20 minutes ago. Can we say or one of, or something to compromise? Is that even feasible? We know we want this. We're not saying we want to develop, make it difficult to live in an area. Of course not.
Yeah.
And we do want to make it accessible. But having all of those, like Kathleen referred to, might be the most difficult.
Yeah. I get what Everett's saying. It's not practical to have all those items here, but if there can be some way to reword this to where it's required to be near something. It cannot just be allowed to run amok, because that's what we've seen. And like I said from, my interview to be on the CPAC, unnecessary, unneeded things are not what we need on this island, 100%. There's things that are down the road that I'm just itching to talk about, but we'll save that for when that time comes. But thank you guys, everybody on here. Your thoughts mean a lot to me. I hope you know that. Yeah.
And Cody first, and then Mike.
Also, mahalo, everybody. Just listening to everybody's comments, and I agree as well that we do need stronger language. So I grew up my whole life basically here in Kulakai, and I remember walking to KA school, catching the bus, and walking to Lokelani, and then growing up, and then having to, when I used to work at Eskimo Candy, living on Walakahau, I would be able to walk to Eskimo Candy or ride my bike. Then as I got older, I was working at, the Maui Prince, Luau, and the Renaissance Hotel, Luau, and, then I'd have to, this is like in my early teens, so I'd have to always try to find a ride, catch a ride, and it was always hard, and we always kind of looked at those areas as out of our hands, that's where all the rich people live, and we go there to dance and you know what I mean, make amuse them, and then we go back home to where we are, and I think for me it's real personal because I actually grew up here as a child and went through all that, and I think it is important that we have that strong language, that we have communities that are able to eat and work and go to school and be able to live in their own communities and do those things and provide those opportunities.
Vernon? Oh, I'm sorry. We had Mike first, then Vernon.
Yes, don't forget your buddy here. I think using that, saying the strong language gives the NIMBYs more power. I think the NIMBYs are always going to object regardless. We see it all the time for a variety of reasons. Some reasons are legitimate. When, I don't know if Brandy is still here, when she was talking about her little street, that wasn't people that were saying, oh yeah, build it somewhere else. There was a very valid reasons by saying, don't build this here unless you're going to provide infrastructure. So sometimes we use that broad brush, oh, these are the NIMBYs. No, some people have a real valid reason why a project shouldn't be built in a specific location. If they're building it in the wetlands, if they're trying to build it in a river, if they're trying to build it in a area that's prone to fires, there are legitimate reasons, and they're not all just NIMBY saying no. Other times there are, yes. I'll go back to that project, the Halikaiola project, that KCA, we supported it because we felt it was in a reasonable location, but there were homes that were built, newer homes that were built near there that people said, oh, wait a minute, that's going to bring down my home values. That sounded like NIMBY to me, by my estimation, but saying using strong language gives the NIMBYs more opportunity. I think they're going to be there regardless whether their reason is sound or not. And so yeah, I keep going back to that. We need that stronger language which can be accepted later on if we give the weaker language, then we can't go in and say, oh no, we meant this to be stronger than that. So I think that's why we keep pushing, some of us keep pushing for the require. Thank you.
Brendan.
Yeah. Strong language, everybody. Yeah, we all like do that, but yeah, you gotta have one out though, because if I developing one affordable housing and it does not meet all the other requirements, then that affordable housing project should be not approved, right? Is that right? I mean, everybody can go like that, you know, but yeah, so required 51% and 49% maybe get chance to tweak it or do the guava jelly thingy. But you see what I'm saying is I'm gonna build an affordable housing project not close to one school and services and oriented design elements that create walkable and livable communities for all. How that project gonna get approved? Okay, here you go.
If instead of doing the whole list, you put to be near job centers and transit to schools and services, that way transit gives you the out, but it also requires the rest of the elements, like walkable design elements that create livable communities. If you're far away from job centers, everyone has to get in a car for everything. That's not truly affordable.
Yeah, so if my affordable project is before the police station, you know what I mean, right? We still gotta transit some way, somehow, by car mostly, or by bus.
Transit would be by bus.
Yeah, right.
So it would be near access.
So, okay, so the question now is how close the project gotta be to one school? 5 miles, 3 miles, we don't know that, right? So, you know what I mean? The school can be in Malaya and then we build affordable homes here, but still the school down that way, right? Or we know enough school in Kulakai.
Schools is kind of a weird one in this area.
Yeah,
Because
so
you only
that's
have the
why I
schools in
just-
one area. So maybe take out schools.
I
and
put
the
it
rest
on my
can be in
Punahou
there.
hat. No, I never went Punahou. I'm Baldwin. So yeah, so I went from Baldwin to Punahou. So I just me questioning that. Yeah.
So I wonder if just specifically, aren't we talking about, I mean, the only place we really have for any significant development, because we're not talking about like 5 units or 10 units, we're talking about a large number of units, is going to be Mauka the highway, which is pretty much close to the new high school and across the highway from Lokalani and Key Elementary School. That is pretty close. I mean, it's hard to get closer than that, as far as I can see. Tova?
It seems to me like in this discussion, none of us are fundamentally we're all in step. We all envision a future Maui where our communities are more well-rounded and serving more people. We seem to be just getting hung up in the language about whether or not being strict here helps more affordable housing or hinders it. So I'm wondering if we've just drawn the wrong box. And Karen tried to get at this, Jenny tried to get at this. Is there a way to separate out that piece of intelligent community planning from a specific line item relating to the requirements for affordable housing? Is there some other way to have that policy included in this plan so that vision can be preserved without us being at odds about what it will mean in the long run, specifically for implementing affordable housing? So, that's a question to all minds in the room, because it feels like we're at an impasse until we figure out how we all can get our vision and feel comfortable that it will be implemented as such.
I have a feeling we're going to keep coming back to this because it's really a matter of are these things which we really feel are necessary, are these things which are just optional? And I think in the past we said they're optional if they're expensive. But what we're proposing to change now is saying that they're not optional. These are things that are mandatory. We need these things. Even people who don't have a lot of money need to have these things.
And I mean, I agree, and I think everyone else agrees that this is the vision that we want. But isn't that just about smart community design? Why does it have to be tied to affordable housing projects? That's what's the hiccup. Can we have language that is about smart expansion? I mean, isn't that the point of the growth boundaries and the different levels of zoning? Can't it be embedded in that our vision is there, where there's no way to NIMBY your way out of it with a word and a policy?
So that's actually in 2.2.15 on the same page. So this one is about making sure that even people who don't have a lot of money get those same benefits. So that's really the difference. Do we go in for and require that people who don't have a lot of money will get the same benefits that everyone else does? That's really what this is about. Or do we say, no, let's just build them some housing, because that's all we can afford for them? Everett?
What if we go back to 2015 and say complete economically diverse communities?
Then we have the question of just support or require, because you kind of can't get away from that. Is it optional for some people? And then, I mean, I'm not worried about the rich people not getting lots of schools and wherever they need. They'll pay for it. They'll get it. I'm worried about the people who don't have a lot of money.
I agree with you. We all want the same thing. We're all after affordable housing, and good communities. I mean, we're all. I like the discussion. It's respectful. We all want it. Seems like we'd be smart enough to figure out the right language to get it.
So my reading is that if we just eliminate 2.2.16, then we have this ideal. In other words, yes, everything will be fine. We want this, but it's not going to happen. At least it's not going to happen for the people who don't have a lot of money, because they don't have the leverage that the people who do have a lot of money do. And that's why this 2.2.16 exists, so that we give them that leverage by putting it in the community plan. Yes, Tova?
Can we require 2.2.15? I mean, because then there is no exemption. Then if an affordable housing was put forward and was not all of these things, you'd be like, no, that is required in here. But it's every community.
I think Cody actually proposed that. No motion, but I think he proposed that language.
Chair.
Really, this is about whether, as I understand, this is about whether explicitly affordable housing projects are exempted from requirement or not. And I think they should not be exempted. I think they should have this requirement too.
I just wanted to interject for 1 second because I think there's some relevant information regarding the state statute 201H as well as chapters 2.96 or 2.97. They both contain language which allow the state or a developer to be exempted from ordinances, specifically the general plan, under if they're meeting all the other standards for development. The same goes for 201H. They don't have to abide by any of that. So it could be a moot point. I think you're all trying to make, a similar argument here about whether it's require or support, but, you potentially could talk about encouraging it with, for the purposes of multifamily housing, because in this instance, 2.97 can also apply to, single-family subdivision developments. So taking Mr. Dowling's point there, like this could discourage affordable projects that were strictly single-family developments that were subdivisions. But you could amend it to encourage all the things that you're talking about location-wise in terms of being near job centers, schools, transit, and services for multifamily mixed-use projects with the provision that you also provide development incentives above and beyond what is currently there now. So you could do density bonuses, height bonuses, setback reductions, things that would encourage a developer to still do an affordable housing project that is closer to schools and jobs and things of that nature. Because, you know, as Everett was describing, the land is going to be more expensive. So if you sweeten the pot, so to speak, with some of these development incentives, it might encourage them to pursue that. Thank you.
So I don't think that 2.2.16 excludes the idea of incentives. It's not. There's no opposition there. This just says that this is what needs to be done, and then if it can be done easier with incentives, I think that's fully compatible with this proposal. Obviously, the attraction of, and I think one of the things that this proposal tries to get around is that the reason developers like 2.1H and 2.97 is because it lets them skip certain things which might cost money. And I think we have a better approach for that now, which has been very prominent the last couple of years, which is that the county steps in to cover some of that infrastructure cost. So I think having the county offset infrastructure costs, having incentives, is in no way in opposition to this requirement. It's pretty much, you pretty much have to have both for it to pencil out. So I don't see that as an undermining this proposal. I mean, I don't think I saw any item which says explicitly that, maybe I just missed something and forgot it, but that the county should, for example, pay for all infrastructure. But that is the way direction has gone, is that we're seeing that we didn't get much affordable housing as long as the county said the developer had to provide all that as well. Either we got no housing or we got no infrastructure, one or the other. And now we kind of moved to a direction where the county has expanded its affordable housing fund and is putting in incentives and money to make it possible to do affordable housing and still get that infrastructure. Yes.
Okay. Make this quick. I think with 2.2.16, the words "to be near" is what we're focusing on here. Okay, so "to be near" might not be feasible, but if we can use the words like "open up connectivity" or something along those lines to services and facilities, I think that might be more what we're trying to achieve in this.
That would be to be near transit to job centers, schools, and services. To be near or to be near transit. So you
To
could
be
have
near
both.
transit or, yeah, I don't know. I think what to be near is, yeah. To be near makes it location-based, where it could be open up connectivity to service and facilities.
I think someone already pointed out that if it just is about being able to transit to jobs and schools, then it could be it could be anywhere really. So I think the idea here is that we have a kind of a mixed community where people can get their needs addressed within that community, as well as, of course, getting transit to other communities, other areas as well. So I don't think that saying that just that you can hop on the bus and get to schools and services and other things like that is.
Walkways, bicycle ways, encouraging things like that.
Yeah, Mike?
We look at that word "near," and I think that's a vague term, and that's what we get into this. As soon as the term isn't specific, isn't strong, well, what is near? How do you define how near is? So maybe that's one more example of not using firm, strong language. That's kind of vague. What does near mean? Everybody has a different opinion. So when you use that word "near," maybe it's not specific enough. Thank you.
My personal interpretation when I see that is I can bike or walk to one of these things. I can bike or walk to school, to a bus stop, to a job. That's my interpretation. And I don't know how that would translate into miles or feet. Everett, do you have a way to break this?
I don't, but you know, I really appreciate the conversation. I think everyone's coming at it with a good heart. But just based on everyone's comments, I think it's, as I count the votes, it's required. And you know, I think you know, the funny thing about Wayne and I don't think Wayne and I have ever agreed. We've never agreed on anything. We've never agreed on anything. But we're good friends. We're good friends, and we like each other. But we've never agreed on anything. So I know he comes from a good place. I know he means the best. I know he thinks I mean the best too. And that's the beauty of our friendship. But I think on this one we should probably. I think the votes are required, and I think we've kind of beat it to death. And I think we should probably move on.
Okay, so I think I agree with Everett, and yeah, we're at 8:15, and we made it to, we're talking about the first 5 policies of about 15 or so. So I'd like to hear some motions, and first of all, are there specific changes that someone would like to make a motion for to 2.2.16? I haven't heard any proposals for change. Oh, we had one. We had a proposal from Cody to change 2.2.15. So you want to make that as a motion? Karen, did you catch that? So that you can read it back to us?
It's 2.2.15.
Yes.
Require the development of pedestrian-oriented complete communities that meet residents' needs for daily living by providing a mix of land uses, housing close to jobs, services, schools, and recreation, and convenient and safe mobility options, including walking and biking and transit options.
Is that correct, Cody?
I'd put require that new development be pedestrian-oriented and comprise complete communities that meet residents, etc. And for 2.216, I was thinking instead of to be near, how about to be accessible? Or is that the same thing?
I think just move on that one. So did you get that new proposal, Karen, for 2.2.15?
Require the development of pedestrian-oriented developments that
require new
comprise
development.
new development. You can't really require old development anyway, but
Require that new development be pedestrian-oriented and comprise complete communities that meet residents' needs.
So I think since we're at this point, I think we'll just look at that one item there. And is there, are there any other motions? Actually, I'm sorry. We have a motion. Let's have discussion on that motion. That's the way I should put it. Oh, okay. Are you making a motion for that?
Yes.
Yeah. Do we have a second? Second by Mike. Okay. Any further discussion on this 2.2.15 with Cody's motion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Those opposed?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Okay. Question. So this is Cody's motion for 2.2.15. Adopting with that change. Let's try it again.
Require, yeah, it's the word require.
Require, and then also that new development.
I'm not ready to vote.
Okay, you ready to vote? Okay.
Yeah.
Aye. Aye. Okay. And Everett, I didn't get you. Aye. Okay. Okay, it's unanimous. And then 2.2.16 is apparently is not going to be unanimous. And I don't think we came up with, if someone wants to make a motion, they can do it, but I don't think anyone came up with language which really solves the roadblock here. So would someone to make a motion to adopt this 2.2.16 as expressed?
I mean, I would say if somebody wants to make a motion, that we should still have a vote. I don't think we can assume we know what the votes are. We think we might know what the votes are, but you should still vote.
Yes.
So the motion should be made and it should be voted on, regardless if we think it'll pass or not.
Yes. So I'm asking if someone wants to make a motion.
So I'll make the motion to remove required and promote affordable housing.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to replace require with support. Oh, promote. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Those against?
No.
Thank you. So that motion fails. And then I'll put up the motion. Will someone make a motion to adopt the 2.2.16 as it stands?
So moved.
Mike makes the motion. And Wayne seconds. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please raise your hand.
Take mine down.
Okay, try again. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yes. Okay. And those against?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. And the motion passes as written. And then we have, and are you going to make a motion, Daniel, for your new policy?
Yes, but I'm going to change it.
Oh, the guava jelly part.
No, I'm going to change, there's a difference between what affordable housing and workforce housing is. And I think I was shooting more for workforce housing. So the language would be to require workforce housing to be spread out equitably throughout the South Maui Community Plan sub-areas, with the exception of Ahihi and Kanaio, to create diverse communities economically and geographically in all South Maui residential areas. So it's workforce instead of affordable.
You making that motion?
I make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? Everett seconds. Okay.
Can I speak to the motion?
Yes. No. Go ahead.
Yeah, there is a need for workforce housing in some sub-areas. And as I understand workforce housing, it's AMI between 80 and 120%. And so there are some areas that don't have workforce housing that really could need it, should have it. Because I see cars traveling at shift changes in and out of these areas. And it would be nice if these folks actually lived in the area where they work. That would really help out, I think.
Any discussion on this motion? Those in favor, let's do it anyway. Those in favor, please raise your hand since we're on this track. Unanimous, thank you. I won't even ask if there's any against. And I think, was there someone who was in favor of Stan's second proposal here? Everett, you're modifying that to?
Present all housing projects to a citizen committee, to the appropriate citizen committee, to a citizens committee in the appropriate area of the project for their comments before submitting to the County of Maui for approval.
Seconded by Jennifer. Tova, discussion?
Tiny discussion. can we replace appropriate friendly amendment with the closest? Only because I heard some weird story recently about someone going to the wrong community. Anyway, yeah, okay.
Is that a friendly amendment? You accepted? Okay. Did you get that? Can you read that back to us so we know what we're voting on?
Present all housing projects to the closest citizens committee to the project association for their comments before the submittal to the county of Maui for approval.
I can be more specific. Present all housing projects to a citizens committee. To a citizens committee nearest to the project for their comments before submitting to the County of Maui for approval. And the intent here is if it's in Malaya, submit to Malaya Community Association. If it's in Kihei, submit to Kihei Community Association. If it's in Wailea, submit to the Wailea Community Association, McKenna to the McKenna Association.
And we had a second on that? Jennifer, okay. Including with the change? Good. Any further discussion on that proposal? All in favor? Wayne? In favor, okay. And all against?
No.
Okay, one, okay. Motion passes. Okay, and we have not had any explicit discussion of 2.2.17, 2.2.18, and 2.2.19. Would someone make a motion to adopt those three?
I would like to speak to 17.
Yes.
17, I like to make a motion that we delete in its entirety. And the reason I'm suggesting that is there's an affordable housing law, and I'm extremely concerned that we're losing our middle class. I think we're doing a pretty good job of building a lot of affordable housing, and we need more, but I'm really concerned that we're losing our middle class. We can't keep doctors here. We can't keep nurses here. We can't keep. I've got an example of two boys who grew up with my son, born and raised here. Their families have been here for a long time. Went to St. Anthony's. They went off to college, Oregon State. They got their degrees. Both of them are civil engineers. They want to come home. They can't afford to come home. We aren't building enough market housing. We aren't building enough housing, period. And I think, Mike, to your point, a lot of it's infrastructure. I think a lot of it is we have inadequate infrastructure. So by building more affordable housing, that means we're building less market housing. So for that reason, make the motion that we delete 2.2.17.
Is there a second? Jennifer seconds. Any further discussion? Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, Everett, I could give a lot of examples of why many of my friends were forced to leave Maui because they lived paycheck by paycheck. And this doesn't mean that they wanted to go. It's by choice that they couldn't afford to live on Maui. How do you answer that question to a lot of my friends that were forced to leave Maui because they could not afford to raise their families here? You can make an example of engineers. These people were born and raised there. They wanted to stay on Maui. It's the way they grew up. It's the way their mom and dad grew up. Where's the compassion for this motion?
And I'm saying the same thing, Wayne. The people I'm referring to were born and raised here. Their families have been here for generations. Because they make too much money, they can't live here. So I mean, we need housing of all types. We want all of those people here. We want to be able to keep our children here. We want to be able to keep our grandchildren here. We need housing of all types. But to put this language in here, it means that we're building more affordable housing at the expense of market housing. We need housing, period. We want all of those people here. I think all of our desire is to keep everyone here. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not speaking against low-income households or individuals. We're providing. I mean, this section was about building affordable housing. I'm not saying don't build affordable housing. I'm just saying build all types of housing. But if you build a greater percentage of affordable housing in projects, it's coming at the expense. You're building less market housing. That's all I'm saying.
So my interpretation of this, when I saw this, was I was thinking of certain developers, like especially Ikai Kohana. I hope you all watched that housing town hall. I thought he was excellent. That was really excellent speaker and excellent projects. Gone beyond what they have to do. Provided more affordable housing than they would have had to in order to get the exceptions and whatever they wanted. So this is just encouraging developers to be more generous, I think. I think that's what this is about. To provide more than they're actually required to.
I just want to remind everybody that one of the testimonies did suggest that we should not eliminate credits. And this is actually stating that there would be no credits.
It says no credits outside of the community plan sub-area.
Oh, sorry.
Tova?
So these are policies. So policies are looked at when a plan is going forward. So what is the effect of a policy set that says encourage a greater percentage of affordable housing? If someone's reviewing something, what does that even mean? Because when we're talking about credits, or this example where there were things that helped them to make it more worth their while, that wasn't at the policy review of the plan going forward, that would have been at some incentive step. So I'm just trying to understand what we are or aren't doing by having an encourage step during review.
This is more to give the affordable developer who is doing more the checkbox to say that they did meet the encouraged a greater percentage of affordable housing. The second part about the obligations must be met within the boundaries of the community plan sub-area. That would be if you're building a development in Ma'alaya, you need to develop your affordable housing in Ma'alaya. If you are developing in Kihei, it needs to be in Kihei, instead of developing in Wailea and putting your affordable housing in Kihei.
Yeah, that was my reaction when I read it too. This is like a brownie point for the developer who goes above and beyond the absolute requirements. Daniel?
Yeah, the word encourage is very, it's not a really strong word, to urge, to coax, to persuade. I tried my best to persuade them to go to dinner with me, but they don't want to. I urged him to go to UHMC, but he doesn't want to go there. I tried to coax him to, get up early, but you want to sleep in. You know, do you have this freedom of choice? You're not being forced to do anything. So, you know, it's pretty, to me, it's pretty harmless. Maybe having the credits only be used in the sub areas with, you know, that's something that you will have to do, but the rest is pretty, you know, pretty passive.
Okay, Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, I don't appreciate the butchering of this plan. Can I ask planning why credits did not want to be used? What's the policy?
Currently, when higher-end housing is built, a lot of times the NIMBYs would like the lower-income people to be somewhere else. So they put the affordable housing in another cheaper area to build. So this is saying you need to build your housing where you're building the housing.
Which I think is very much along the lines of the new policy that Daniel proposed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
Karen, could you give me an example that happened on Maui?
You know I'm a West Maui person.
Yeah, if you don't know, I'll find out.
I mean, there's Kaanapali. Kaanapali has a very new little tiny development that's affordable, but the entire rest of it is unaffordable to anybody. And that new one is very, very new. And it's like 10, 15 houses. So all of Kaanapali has no affordable housing. Anyone who works there has to take a bus there. So this is very much along the lines of what Daniel proposed earlier.
Mike?
I can give an example where it didn't happen because the project still wasn't completed, but what was then called the Wailea 670, they were required to put affordable housing, and the developer's spokesman proposal said, okay, yeah, we'll put the affordable housing, we'll put it up in the industrial park in North Kihei, way back in the corner. And there was such a backlash saying, no, if you're going to build this development, this high-end development, you're required to put the affordable segment included in the same area. And then the developer's spokesperson did agree at the time. Now, the project is still going on. Nothing was ever built. But that proposal to put it up in the North Kihei industrial area was withdrawn, and agreement was. So it didn't actually happen, but that was an attempt to do that very thing. Oh, well, these are the affordable people. We'll stick them up in this, next to this industrial area, where the nice area then next to Wailea will only be for the upper class people. So that was one attempt to do that. It didn't happen, but it was an attempt.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't think that applies really here because this says within the boundaries of the community plan sub-area, and Wailea and North Key are in the same community plan sub-area. But the idea is correct.
Just to clarify, it doesn't have to be the same parcel.
It is not the same parcel, but the sub-area is not exactly that either. The sub-area would be, when we look at the maps, Ma'alaya is one sub-area, North Kihei, we call them Area 1, Area 2, but there are separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it does apply. Okay, any further discussion of 2.2.17, the motion to remove it? So the motion is to remove 2.2.17 entirely. Those in favor of removing 2.2.17, please raise your hand. And those opposed to removing it, raise your hand. Thank you. Motion fails. That doesn't mean that we've adopted it, though. So someone needs to make a motion to, someone could make a motion to adopt 2.2.17 and 2.2.18 and 2.2.19 if they want to. Do I hear a motion? Everett? Motion for 2.18. Is there a second for that one? Tova seconds that. Any discussion on adopting 2.2.18? I'm going to ask for a vote, even though I think this one's uncontroversial. Those supporting the motion to adopt 2.2.18 as written, please raise your hand. 9. And those opposed?
No.
1. Okay. Motion passes. And then there's just one left, I guess, in our bundle of 5. 2.2.19. Everett?
I make a motion that we delete 100% affordable. We delete earning 100% of the median, 100% of the AMI and below, so that it reads, prioritize infrastructure improvements for housing developments for resident households that are supported by the community and the community plan map and policies. Not just affordable housing, but infrastructure for all housing.
Just a comment. You wouldn't need to prioritize that. I mean, this is prioritizing. It's just comparing one thing to another.
Well,
this is suggesting that we should put more into affordable housing than other housing.
Well, I think you could prioritize infrastructure for things other than housing. In other words, I'm going back, you know, for an example, North-South Collector Road. I mean, if North-South Collector Road were in, it would help housing of all price levels.
Okay, personally, I don't think it makes sense to say prioritize if you don't have anything prioritized against. This is prioritizing infrastructure for affordable housing versus infrastructure for in general. But
amongst the, I mean, you could say you could do infrastructure for. I'm trying to think of a good example. You could do infrastructure for parks. Parks is an infrastructure. You could do wastewater effluent. You could expand effluent lines, and that's infrastructure. But I'm really focusing on infrastructure that supports housing of all price levels.
is there a second? Okay, Ryan seconds. Wayne, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is really offensive, Everett. That the move is to try to eliminate the community plan maps. We haven't even reached this point in our discussion as a group yet. And you're going to wipe it all out, butcher it with this motion?
I'm sorry, did you say map?
Yeah, I read it to say community plan maps.
I'm not trying to delete the map.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm not trying to delete the map. I'm saying prioritize infrastructure improvements for housing, for resident households.
Did you catch that, Karen? I'm not sure I understand. Could you say that again?
Prioritize infrastructure improvements for housing developments for residents, households that are supported by the community and the community plan map and policies.
And Brian, you're seconding that? Okay.
So the community plan map is still in there. He's just deleting 100% affordable. And earning. Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay, put it to a vote. Those in favor of Everett's motion, removing the 100% affordable housing and the 100% AMI, please raise your hand. And those are against, please raise your hand.
No.
I find that motion has failed. There's still a possibility to make a motion to adopt it as it
Chairman.
stands. Yes.
Isn't it the time to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, we were just
I
trying
make
to,
a motion.
we're just trying to get past this 2.2.19.
Wait, I'm going to second Wayne's motion.
I want some discussion on this. So I think we can make it through 2.2.19. Is there a motion to adopt it? If there's no motion to adopt it, then we will adjourn. Okay, there's no motion to adopt it? Okay, so we will continue with the policies. I guess, let's see, I'm going to have to think about this. Let me consult a little bit with planning to think about how we're going to fit all the rest of the things that are remaining for us in our agenda. It depends. So one of the reasons why we can't just say we'll continue on this next time is because the planning department has spent time lining up speakers on various topics, and some of them won't necessarily be available. So we may have to make some compromises in the order that we do things. Although ideally, I think we just continue where we left off. But I'll let you guys know after some consultation. Meeting adjourned.